What's up, alumni? Welcome to After 4, your podcast for navigating life after graduation. I'm your host and guide, John Steele. This week, we're continuing our series on health and wellness, but we're transitioning away from training and teaching from experts and moving into stories from alumni like you and their experience meeting Jesus in their health and wellness journey after graduation. Today, we're hanging out with Halley Weinberger, Minnesota State Mankato alumna, good friend, and past guest on the podcast. Halley's going to share about an unexpected health scare she had going into her senior year of college and the way it shaped not only her personal wellness journey, but also her relationship with Jesus for the months and years that followed. Here's Halley, and this one's for you, alumni. Halley, welcome back.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
It is awesome to have you. It's been, it's been like a year and a half, I think, since you joined us on the podcast. A lot has happened since then.
Yes.
There are some stories to tell, and I'm excited for you to be here with us. Welcome. Halley, would you help our listeners get to know you, our new listeners who have joined us since the last time you were here, and just give us a bit of an introduction?
Yeah, for sure. Well, fun to reflect because the last time I was on the podcast, I was actually about to graduate undergrad. And so this is like a full circle moment because I am about to graduate graduate school in May, which is crazy.
That's crazy.
Yes. So my name is Halley, and I am currently in grad school at Minnesota State University, Mankato. I am pursuing my graduate degree or my master's degree in industrial organizational psychology, which sounds so big and fancy for no specific reason. But really, it's just looking at ways to use data to solve people problems in the workplace. So I've really enjoyed it, and I've learned a lot more about it since being in the field, which I think is a good thing. But yeah, so I've been in Mankato. This is my 5th year in Mankato. And so I've had the gift of really being rooted in community over the past 5 years and am preparing to leave Mankato in the spring when I graduate. I also recently, I know, I also recently got engaged. So that is, so I am also in a season of engagement and preparation for getting married in August 2025. So lots of exciting things. But that's like a little bit about me. Is there any other fun facts I should share?
That's great. I mean, the last time you shared about let's see here, what was it? Sunsets and chocolate ice cream. Is that am I remembering correctly?
You're remembering
or is
a
it
little bit
sunrises?
No, it's sunsets. I am a sunset enthusiast. I will chase any sunset. In fact, I did chase the sunset the other night here on foot, in fact. And
wow.
I look like a maniac because I'm just like running through the streets in regular clothing. But I just don't care. I'm like, to me, that is the joy of being alive is just like, look at me. No one, like everyone can see me, but no one knows the joy I have inside. So yes, sunset chasing is something that I do. And chocolate ice cream actually is something that I hate. I don't like chocolate. Okay. So that was my fun fact. But you did remember that.
You hate it. Okay. Yes. I remember that chocolate ice cream was a thing.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Very nice. Yes. Well, Halley, I'm so excited to have you back with us. And you're joining us in a really interesting conversation that we're in the middle of here, kicking off the new year. For 2025, we're talking about health and wellness. We've talked to a few different experts in just a few different parts of health and wellness. There are so many that we could do like multiple series on, but we just hit a few highlights. And now we're turning to alumni stories about health and wellness after graduation or in, sort of the post-college part. You've been in grad school and that's been an important part. Like even just that conversation, we could talk about what does wellness look like in grad school.
Oh my gosh.
But you have a story that adds a unique flavor to the wellness conversation, I would say, especially for someone at your age. And it's interesting to me that you even used like the phrase just now, chasing down sunsets and talking about the joy of living, the joy that lives inside your heart, because that has a lot to do with the story that you're going to tell, I think, with the story that you're going to tell today.
Yeah.
So let's see here. In 2023, you started grad school, but it was the summer before that you had sort of a life-changing thing happen for you. So I'll leave all of that to you, but set the scene for us and tell us what was this thing that happened that had a major impact on your health and wellness?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll actually back up a little bit further. And so,
Okay.
like I'd mentioned, I went to MNSU, or Minnesota State University, Mankato, for undergrad. And so I had been a sophomore in college. I was finishing up my sophomore year in psychology and communications, and it was pretty intense. And so was doing a lot of work, staying up late, doing a lot of hours. Was super excited to finish the semester, and so had gone home for the summer. And worked, of course, because when you're in college, that is what your summers consist of,
Yes.
which was fun. So I did some traveling for work and some long days and nights, and I'd come back and was really ready to relax. And so I had about a week of that where I was home with my family. My whole family was home. I was getting to see my boyfriend at the time. I saw his family. And so it was really just this sweet time of summer. And because I love sunsets and ice cream, summer is my favorite season. So I was really thinking about all of the things that I was going to do. I had pretty much planned out my summer week by week, and it all was just fun things or travel or work. And so one night I was just relaxing. My family, fun fact, they're all night owls, and I normally go to bed earliest at like midnight, including my parents. And so it was around 11 p.m. On like a Tuesday night, and we were just hanging out, and I was eating a bowl of ice cream. And all of a sudden I could not see. And I thought, this is a little weird, but I'm like pretty tired. So I turned around to just like tell my mom, like, oh, hey, she was behind me in the kitchen and I was in the living room, and just say like, hey, like, I can't see. And like, actually, like my arm's kind of numb, but isn't this weird? Like, just hate when that happens. And so I turned around and I realized I couldn't speak. And that was when the panic hit, and I realized like I am out of control. Like I can't, like something is very wrong. And so I was able to get my family's attention, and just like flag them down. And they at first were like, what are you doing? And then they were like, oh, she's not okay. And so they called emergency services and really spent that night in the hospital trying to figure out what was going on. There was a number of things, but I was 20. And so a lot of the doctors thought maybe heat exhaustion, or maybe she's dehydrated. It's summer, she's had a long day. And so I really ended up going home and just not really knowing what happened. But wow. I knew something was off. And so I, the next day, slept for 12 hours, because what we later discovered within the next 2 days is that I had suffered 3 small strokes. I couldn't grab things. I lost dexterity in my fingers. I had a limp on the right side of my body. And I really just had to retrain how to eat. Like I couldn't pick up a fork. Chewing food took a lot of effort.
Oh my goodness.
And so like all these basic things in the moment that you're just like going through because you have to, and it's survival. And you're not really thinking about it in the moment. And so at the time it was a lot and it was very traumatic, but truly like I was just surviving. And so that summer really turned into a time of recovery for me and relearning. I had over 40 appointments in 2 months, and I would drive like 40 minutes, or someone would drive me to my appointments every day in Minneapolis. So that's like a little bit of what shook my world in the summer going into my final year of undergrad.
Yeah. And did they have any idea, like, is this just like, do they know what caused this to happen in the first place? Or is it just still sort of a mystery of like, yeah, this just happened and we don't know why?
Yeah, so it's a bit of both. Because they didn't diagnose it right away, they couldn't point to this was the cause. We know 100%. But they did find after the fact a small hole in my heart. It's pretty common, honestly, and it really doesn't affect most people. But in this case, it did affect me. And so I did also have a heart procedure in July of 2022, where I was put on additional restrictions and I couldn't lift anything more than 5 pounds. And then I moved back to school a week later.
Okay. No big deal. Oh my goodness. So yeah, you talk about having this summer that everything is planned out. You have all of these different events that you're going to do. You're going to work like every every college student does in preparation for their next year, and then everything gets flipped upside down because of these 3 strokes. And so then you have this procedure, and you go back to school. Okay, so then as far as, school was sort of like normal life. Summer is sort of the break from normal life for a while. But now you've had these strokes and this procedure, and you're still recovering. Like, what was it like for you returning to normal, quote unquote, normal life after all of this happening?
It was both terrifying and refreshing because I had spent my whole summer in my house, and just being at home was very difficult because you're processing. One, I had the stroke in my house. And so I was every day in the place where this had happened. And 2, It was processing every day in my house. Oh, I was going to do this today, but now I'm at my house and I'm just sitting here because I don't have the energy to go on a walk, and I don't have the energy to, like, sitting in the sun took energy. So there was some excitement with, like, oh yes, I'm escaping my house. Like, I'm going to be in a different space. I'm going to be able to just not think about it anymore. But the other reality was that's terrifying because I don't have the support of my family here. And I still wasn't really doing much for myself 2 months post stroke. And so coming back was this intense fear of, I have to cook myself lunch. I have to, like, make food and survive. Like, I need to do school and all these demands and jobs. And also with that came a little bit of financial anxiety because I had planned to work all summer. And so I had planned, I'll have this money and I have these jobs at school. And one of the jobs that I did was a tour guide, but you can't, it was 90 minutes of walking and talking, and that was coordination. It took energy. And so I just had lost basically 2 jobs because of this.
Wow.
And then on top of that, just like walking to campus was a lot. So it was really very difficult to come back. And it was also a little bit isolating because whereas at home, like, everyone, they were there, like, they knew deeply what I was going through. And here people knew, and they were, like, very supportive, but to a degree, like, I don't know how to understand an event that you didn't live with someone for 2 months. And so they really did their best, but it's like, when you have a friend going through something difficult, and when you're with the friend, you fully empathize with them. But when you're not with the friend, you're able to think about your to-do list in your life, and I got to go grocery shopping. Yeah. And that was how it was, where for me, it affected me every day. And every day I woke up, that's what I thought about. And when I saw people, obviously, I don't expect them to be thinking about this every day, but it was just me thinking about it. So.
Yeah. Wow. Was that ever then difficult to interact with other people? 'Cause like you said, this is something you can't take off. Like, this is just with you, and other people can step in and out of it. Like, was that isolating in some way of, like, I'm the only one here who knows what this was like, and everybody else gets to take a break from it, and I don't?
Yeah, it absolutely was. And that's something that's really hard. I'm definitely a self-proclaimed extrovert. I love people. I want to talk to people. I'm a yapper. I will yap your ear off all day. And so that was something that was hard for me post-stroke, because we don't realize it, but talking takes energy. Like, you're moving your tongue, you're coordinating your lips, you're moving your face, like your facial expressions. Wow. And so every time I had a conversation with someone, I would have to, like, lay down and take a nap for 30 minutes. Gosh. And that would be after, like, a 10-minute conversation. And so it was really difficult for me to choose to engage, but it was really difficult for me to want to engage in that, because I knew, gosh, this is the last energy I'm going to have for the day, and then I'm going to have to go to bed. And so the other part of it was, too, it's just not something I always wanted to bring up. And even though I was experiencing it, like, I didn't expect the person to ask. And when you do talk about it, there is a sense of, like, pity, or just, like, there's just no words. And so I found a lot of support from others who had experienced something like that, just like a deep loss of identity or just ability and health. Honestly, I think health is something that's very unique, because there's very few things like your health that are completely out of your control, and, like, truly and completely. And I think that health in that way is something that has the potential to really draw you close to God because you're out of control. You can't even pretend to be in control because your body is just like in charge. And so, kind of off topic from the question, but yes, it was difficult to engage in relationships.
Wow. Yeah. Well, okay. So then you're taking me down the next road that I want to go anyways here. And that is like, not only these relationships with other people who can step in and out of it, but this relationship with the Lord. Like, I know that, I mean, you're somebody who has been sort of ever expanding their relationship with Jesus and what it looks like to follow him and make him a part of your everyday life. I mean, what was going on between you and God as you were navigating this just unexpected season of health post-stroke?
Oh my gosh. It's like, I don't even know if I can put it into words, but I think I was definitely wrestling with God. And at the beginning, it almost, I think, goes along with the stages of grief. And so at the beginning, it was just like, I'm out of control. Like, I have no other options. Like, I have to trust you, Lord. I have to trust that. I don't know why this happened. And this doesn't really fit with my idea of you always being in control. And, you know, like, this happened to me. And so just trying not to think about that and being like, okay, but here's what you have done for me. You've given me the exact nurses that I need. You've put me at the exact hospital. You've given me the people, like I met hiking people who were like, I just had a stroke a month ago, or like I would go to a baseball game and run into people. Wow. And so just like, that's something I didn't expect. And so I'd say like, you know, thank you, God, like for this experience of this interaction, not necessarily the event itself. And then as I went back to school, just a lot of praying of like, okay, Lord, like, would you use this? And would you help me use this to glorify others? And so I had at the beginning really disconnected from the experience because truthfully, it was traumatic and difficult. And so I was able to engage with God in a way that was grateful from a distance. And then the further I got from the immediate symptoms of like, oh, like my leg is numb, or like, oh, like I can't cook myself dinner, or like started to feel more normal again, the more that I started wrestling with God, because I was looking back at my experiences and saying, are you kidding me, God? Like, that was really hard. That was insanely difficult. And like, I just did that. And there was a little bit too of like some people in my family or in my friends were like, why did this happen to you? And like would ask me that, like, why? And I just had to look at them and say, I don't know. I have no idea why this happened to me. And so just wrestling with God, like, were you protecting me? Were you in charge here? Like, you let this happen? And really a season of wrestling, which I think is not a bad thing. Like, I really think, like, as we see in the Psalms, like David is like really talking with God and like telling him his thoughts, like, hey, God, I feel like you really should help me out in this battle here. Like, hey, God, I really would have appreciated that support. But at the end of the day, he's like, God, you're sovereign and you know more than I do. Or even like, God is the potter, I am the clay. Who am I to tell God what he gets to do with the clay? And so I've kind of come to terms with it in a place where it's God is in control and God is sovereign, and nothing happens outside of God's protection. And what I think looks like protection is not always what God's protection actually looks like. And so that is how I've come to terms with it, because I'm not saying like, oh God, like you caused this, but like, okay, God, this was allowed and this happened and you protected me in it. And I get to like believe that and claim that, and like, and look at me now, like I'm talking. You would never know if you looked at me that this had happened to me. So yeah, that's really, it's been a journey.
Yeah, I was going to say we've been to a number of the same weddings since this happened, and I've seen you out there on the dance floor with Jack, and it's like no problem. Like,
oh yeah, you would never know.
You would never know. No, that it's really interesting to me to think. You know, you're talking about some of the social isolation and people like wanting to come alongside of you, but they weren't there. Like, they weren't in the house with you, like your family was. But the thing that's crazy to me is to think that God is the other one that actually, he's the only one that knows more than you do about this situation. Like, not only was he there when it happened, but he created you. He understands how your body is supposed to function. And he understands the things that go wrong when it's not functioning correctly. And that he's the one that's like bringing the right people to you at the right time, that, you know, your family was able to understand, like, oh, we need to do something here. And like, just that God was intimately walking through all of this with you when it was so hard to find people who understood, that God was the one who understood. And isn't it amazing then that he can so often be the one that we turn to and like point fingers at and be like, how could you let this happen, when he's the one that was, as you said, like protecting you through this situation.
Yes.
And like the reality of our bodies are broken and they respond in broken ways. And but that he was right there with you as your body was in a broken state.
Yes.
And continues to be with you now as you continue to process what this looks like years after the fact.
Yes. And there were so many things where it was like, God, you are with me in this. And like, even when I came back to school, I had been maxed out on credits. I'd been taking 18 credits for 4 semesters straight. And I hadn't planned this. It like literally, I tried to take less credits sooner, but it was like, oh, I have to take these classes. And I was planning to take more credits my final year. When I came back, no, God knew what was going to happen. And he said, no, let's lighten the load. And so when I came back, I had less classes. And like that job that I wasn't planning on having, that I lost that job, they emailed me and they said, Halley, we would love for you to be able to work with us. So we're going to allow you to work here and not give tours. We're going to allow you to sit, like that is what I'm saying, where that's like, God just shows up and he's like, let me provide for you. Like, let me show you that you are not alone in this and that I am still with you. And so like, even in that, I walked into this season that I was very terrified of. And God said, I'm going to provide for you financially. I'm going to provide for you with space and time and not having to take this extra credit load. I am going to provide for you with a boss, and just like literally everything in my life that following year was like, God was like, I am paving the way. Like, yes, this is difficult, but you are walking in what I have paved for you. And so I really, and that's something about this experience as well, is while it was awful and I wouldn't choose to live it again if I could, God has showed me his character and who he is through this more than he might have been able to if this didn't happen. And I have been humbled over and over by how much I need to rest, because that is something very unique to strokes as well, is you have to rest. That's what the doctors say. They're like, oh, you're like, how do I get better, doctor? And they say, you need to take a nap. You need to sleep 10 hours a night. You literally need to sleep. And I'm someone, I've never napped. I mean, who takes naps? Not me. I got stuff to do. I got a to-do list. I'm working these jobs. And so I'd always just been a very busy person that didn't have time to rest. And actually, that was the first thing that my university staff called me out on my freshman year of college. She said, Halley, do you rest? And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Like, that's not a thing.
Wow.
And so really in that, like, there was this continual thread of God saying, like, okay, like, wake up. Like, I am telling you to rest. And like that's something that God says, that is biblical. That is Sabbath. Did you know Sabbath is one of the only things out of these spiritual disciplines that is in the 10 Commandments? God doesn't say you must read your Bible. God says observe the Sabbath. And God says remember the Sabbath. And yet I'm like, no, God, I'm good. I don't need to rest. Like, I got a to-do list to conquer. And so in this, like, through this experience is his mercy and grace, and just like, let me show you my character. Let me show you the good that's actually going to come out of this. Like, I'm going to force you to do this, was just amazing.
Yeah, crazy that for such a doer that the medicine you needed was to stop doing, like, and not just for that it was the medicine that you needed for this recent health scare for the strokes, but also like maybe this was the deeper medicine that your soul needed. And man, I love that. That is such an important word. And I think especially for our audience they're stepping into the, like, they're getting their year of firsts of life after graduation. And okay, now is the time to set the precedent for resting, for stopping, for being able to discern what has been given to me to do, and what are the things that I need to just keep my hands open and let the Lord take care of them. And to not be somebody that right off the bat is setting this precedent of, I work all the time and I do all the things because it's my job to get it done.
Mhm.
And it's just, man, yeah, I think that that's really, really helpful and important for our alumni to hear. But Halley, at the risk of asking for too much, just in
Yes.
case there's something else, I don't. Do you have? I mean, and if that's it, like, let's just
Yeah.
stop right there. That's phenomenal. What other advice or encouragement could I hope for? But do you have like a final pastoral word or encouragement that you would give to alumni who are in their first year of life after graduation, who maybe they don't want to, but maybe they want to? I don't know. There's somewhere in this realm of like, I need to be healthy. Like, do you have a word of encouragement that you would give to them as they explore this new season?
Yeah. Whether it's a word of encouragement or even just speaking the truth in love, I would say prioritize having margin in your life, because that is where the baby step of I'm going to allow myself 30 minutes here, I'm going to allow myself an hour here. That's where rest can begin to grow. And that's really where I think health comes from. Because if we're talking about health in terms of spiritual health and our souls, like our souls are really what needs rest in order for us to feel the spirit and presence of God, like, just like living a full, joyful life. And so for me, what's been true is I was doing all the things. And in this season, in this past couple of months, I've actually stepped back from a couple roles that I was serving in ministry, a couple roles I was serving in jobs, and just kind of removed myself and said like, okay, Lord, like I'm going to take this season of just like sitting with you. I'm going to withdraw with the intent to coming back into a season of like continuing to do things in ministry and investing in people. But creating margin is like giving yourself enough space and giving God enough space to speak to you for what he might want to be saying in this season. And so I know the pressure in new jobs is that like, I can't not get this work done. What will my boss think of me? What will my coworkers think? And I can't not go to this church event because what if they make connections and I'm not there? But the truth is, if you rest intentionally and if you create margin in a way where God can step in and say, oh, like, this is what I've been wanting to tell you, I think that will alter your 2025. I really think that will alter the way that you live this year if you allow space for God to direct your steps. So that would be my encouragement, even though it's difficult. And something in addition would be, this is going to be maybe a specific call out, but if you're hearing this, I really think you need to hear this. If you've been feeling like you need to delete social media, you need to delete social media. I felt like I was supposed to delete social media for a year. I felt God prompting me for a year to delete social media, but I was like, no, God, I work a social media job. I can't. Like, I just like, it's not possible. And I also kept being like, well, no, I just want to post what's going on. Like, I just like, okay, I have a big event. I'm going to post this big event and then I'm going to delete it. And I literally denied like what I felt the Holy Spirit telling me for a year. And finally, like one day was like, I have to delete it. And I deleted it. And like the mental space that I have back, not even from anything like negative social media, because I think it can be positive, but the mental space that I have back is insane. And like what Jesus is stepping into that space instead of letting other voices is amazing. And so I think if you're looking to start with margin, delete social media, make that your margin time because it exists. So that would be my recommendation or encouragement.
That's awesome. That's really great. I think that those are fantastic encouragements, very practical, and once again, I think things that we all need to be thinking about. Man, Halley, thank you so much for coming back and for being incredibly transparent and vulnerable just about things that have happened. And I know the story is just even bigger than what we've had time to talk through today, but to be able to give us some insights into your life personally, but also to help us just see the places where it's like, you don't have to have a stroke for these things to be true. Like you don't have to have this big life event to need these things. And that this feels like a place for us to think about, like, what does our personal daily health look like, and where are the places that rest fits into that? And I didn't know that rest is where we were going to go today. I'm so glad that we went there because I think that is just so important. And so thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah.
and your experiences and your wisdom with us and being a part of the show again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, John. I really am encouraged by what the Lord has been teaching me in spite of these experiences and in spite of the difficulty and pain that is living in the world. But I'm just so confident that God is going to really just bless you by embracing rest and engaging in rest. And so I hope that this can be encouraging to you, and whatever health struggles you may be encountering, whatever feels out of control, I pray that God would just meet you in that and just speak to the need that you have, and that you would be comforted by his Spirit. So blessings to all who listen today. Thank you so much, John. This is always so much fun.
Yes.
Maybe hope to see you again in another couple of years. I'll let you know what's going on.
Yeah,
then.
Let's do it. All right, let's do it. That sounds awesome. I'm down.
Yes.
Thanks, Halley.
Yes.
What an amazing story. And it's taking me back to an idea that's come up a number of times already in this series, and that's the interconnected nature of the different facets of our wellness. Halley's stroke wasn't just impacting her physical health. It impacted her relationships, her education and professional pursuits. It impacted her spiritual wellness. But in the same way, when Halley leaned in with Jesus, recognized his closeness, and followed the prompts that he was giving her to slow down and rest, that also impacted her wellness in so many other areas. And I love that this story isn't just about Halley taking care of her physical self. This story of wellness is a story of meeting Jesus in the good, the bad, and the ugly, and learning what it looks like to walk with him through all of it. Halley, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your story. Alumni, I hope you were encouraged listening. If you'd like to hear more from Halley, I'm going to drop a link to our previous episode in the description. More great wisdom from Halley there. And then come back next week for Justin Morissette, an alum who's going to share the story of his wellness journey as it relates to exercise and fitness, and the ripple effect that that's had on his relational health and his ability to share Jesus in unexpected ways. Until then, consider sharing this episode with someone who needs to hear it, and I will see you in the after, alumni. Thanks for listening to After 4. This podcast is brought to you by the InterVarsity Alumni Relations Team, hosted and produced by John Steele, production assistance by Mike Zentera, edited by Caleb Leppert, and our After 4 theme music was written and performed by John Steele.